Excited for this one, Badger fans. We are going to deep dive on Camren Hunter. What does the film say? Can he replace Chucky Hepburn? What are we actually losing with Hepburn that we're not going to get better when we put Hunter into that place? And where might we get better? A lot to talk about with a great guest on today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Badger fans? Welcome to the show. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every day. I am humbled that you are here, that you're sharing some time with us. I'm excited for this one. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And we're just going to get into the show. We got Coach Gothier back on. I'm excited for this one, Coach. We were going to take all the transfer guys and dedicate an entire show to each one of them, breaking down offense, defense, looking at film, where they're going to fit in. We're going to start with Camren Hunter. So let me refresh everybody's memory here. Camren Hunter, 6'3", 200 pounds, out of Central Arkansas. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Missed all of last year with an injury. The previous year, 16.9 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists per game. Coach, we're going to start offensively, and we'll just talk about what we like about him, where he wins, and then what our concerns are. I'll let you kick this one off. Offensively, Camren Hunter, what do you like?
Yeah, it's great to be with you again, Ryan. Offensively, I can see why the Badgers went after him as hard as they did. He averaged 16.7 points a game in 22-23. I know he didn't play this past year because of injury. He's a 3-level scorer, what I really like about it, and what I really like if you look at his field goal percentage. The last 2 years that he played, he was at 45% from the field, which actually shows that he's a better finisher at the rim and in paint and from two, because his 3-point percentages those 2 years were 25%, 32%, and I'm sure we'll get into his shooting here in a little bit. But so I think it shows that he can finish around the rim from two. But what I really like about him too is, he's gotten to the foul line, and he's an 80% 3-point shooter. And, we'll get into probably talking about him replacing Chucky or whatever, but I do like his ability to get to his shot and score around the rim, but then also draw a foul, which is really good. And then, his rebounding statistics went down the last year. It's hard to read rebounding a lot from the guard position because a lot of that's offensive philosophy and what the coaching staff looks for or wants in their guards. And then the last thing, and just looking at things, is his assist to turnover ratio is not great, especially as a point guard. It's 1-to-1, so he's kind of a high turnover guy. But it's also because I think with the program he was with and the team he played on, he was asked to basically, he was their offense and was asked to do a lot.
Yeah, I like watching him. It's interesting. I think one of the spots that he's going to be able to be really successful for Wisconsin in, hopefully, he gives you kind of a post presence as a guard. And that's something, you and I have talked about this. How many times last year did you hear an announcer say, the Badgers are running the swing again? I
was going to say they can post them in the swing, even though they haven't ran the swing for 5 years.
But maybe next year we do. Because this is a guy, you can invert this guy, right? Against a 5'10", 6-foot guard. He's physical. The body type he reminds me of? He's not this player, but his body type is like Eric Gordon, right? The NBA player, like longtime Clippers guard. He's just big, physical, wide shoulders. He's good in the paint. He gets to that left hand. He's pretty physical. And that ties into your free throw point down there. He's going to get more free throws. He's a good free throw shooter, which is going to help replace some of what AJ Storr did at the line for us. I like the offensive skill set he has down there as a physical guard.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's one of the strong suits. I love your point about the ability to post up, because I do think the Badgers, we both know they don't run the swing, but the Badgers have their best offensive teams have been when they've posted their guards, and they've kind of gotten away from that a little bit the last couple of years. But I think he's a weapon down there because, like you said, he's listed 6'3", 200, but he's probably closer to 6'2". But like you said, he's got a great body. So it's good, even in the Big Ten, a step up in league and physicality and stuff. I do think he's going to be hard for other guards, even in the Big Ten, to match up against, because his body, and he's a good enough athlete, with that post-up game where I think he can do some damage.
What are your thoughts on? So we know the Badgers run a lot of it's pick and roll continuity. They've leaned heavily into. I thought in the pick and roll, like there's times he needs to do a better job of setting up his screen. He's a little quick off it, but I also felt like he had a pretty good feel on when to pull up in the mid range, when the defense is playing off, when to pull up if the defense goes under. What were your thoughts watching him in the pick and roll execute as a point guard?
Yeah, no, what I do like about, I agree with you. He's not great in pick and roll situations, but what he's really good at, I think, is because he's more of a scoring guard. I don't think personally that he's a pure point guard. He's more of a combo guard. But what to your point, what I think he's really good at is he knows how to get to his spots. I don't think he has that burst to get by guys off the dribble, off the bounce. Chucky didn't have that burst either. But he does have a little more shake and wiggle to him. Not necessarily to blow by, but he does a really good job using that physical frame of his, and he's quick enough where he can get to those spots where he can go and get a basket, because he definitely is a scoring mentality. And I think, to your point, I think he does a really good job of he knows where he needs to get to on the floor to get to a shot. He takes a lot of contested shots that, sometimes you would question if it's a good shot or not, but he actually, by his shooting percentages and just watching film on him, he makes a lot of those difficult shots. So I just think it's all about, he knows his spots he wants to and needs to get to, and he does a really good job doing that.
All right, let's shift over a little bit to some of the concerns offensively. I'll start with one that I feel like, and I think this ties into the point you made about more of a combo guard, not really a point guard. When he comes off those screens and he gets downhill, it becomes tunnel vision to some degree. Like there are shots he puts up that are going to frustrate Badger fans. I'll just say that, for better and worse at times.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, shot selection, but, to be fair to him, and you and I talked about this before we started the show, is, I think with the team he was on wasn't very good. And so I think there was so much load on his shoulders, and he would have to be the scorer for him. I think that probably leads to a lot of the questionable shot selection you're talking to. And so hopefully, I'd assume Gard and his staff will clean that up, as well as, I think being surrounded by better players. I think hopefully, there'll be some improvement with that. But I do agree with you that he has a lot of store to his game, in the sense like he's going to take some shots where, Badger fans are going to say, I don't know about that one.
Mm. What else offensively? I have another point here in a sec, but I want to kick it to you. What else offensively stood out as like, not quite sure?
So, one of my concerns that's really stood out to me is he's an inconsistent three-point shooter. So like if you look at, he was 25% in 21-22, and then 22-23, he improved to 32%. And when you actually watch his shot and his form, I don't know what you think, Ryan, but I think his form's actually pretty good. It's a smooth shot. The biggest flaw I see that leads him to be an inconsistent shooter is he twists his lower half. And I think, I'm assuming I'm sure the Badgers coaching staff's aware of that. And I think if they could really clean up where he sticks his landing and gets his feet squared to the rim and doesn't twist his lower half, I do see room for improvement on his three-point shot. But that's one of my big concerns, is just the inconsistency from three-point range.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. And I do think the form looks pretty good. Now, if you watch some of the catch and shoot stuff, it's a lot cleaner, it feels like, by coming off the dribble. And that goes back to your other point, though. A lot is on his shoulders, right? What does the three-point percentage look like when he's not taking 15 threes a year that are the step back, 2 seconds left on the shot clock because we don't have anybody else heave it up shots? And there are that on the film, too. There's some really nice catch and shoot stuff where he's in the corner. That feels pretty good and pretty translatable to the Big Ten level.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with your assessment. I think, like you said, his catch and shoot stuff looks really good. I think a lot of some of the others, especially off the bounce, I think, like you said, I think a lot of times he's trying to get to a specific spot per se. And since he's not as explosive as an athlete, especially off the bounce, I think that's probably where sometimes he gets in trouble, because he's anticipating getting by a guy and he doesn't necessarily get the guy on his hip. So he take some, more difficult shots.
This is great stuff, man. We're going to take a quick break, come back with defensively. How does Camren Hunter fit in? What do we see that we like? What do we see that we don't like? And we're going to continue this talk about how does he replace Chucky Hepburn. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers with Coach Gauthier. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Gametime. Gametime is the number one source for all of your tickets. Listen, with Gametime, you could have gone a couple years ago to Central Arkansas, got great tickets and seen this guy play. Now you can use Gametime to go to the Kohl Center, Camp Randall, wherever you want to go. Find the best tickets to whatever venue you're looking for. Concerts, theater, music, comedy, whatever it is. Whatever tickles the medulla oblongata up there, use Gametime to go find the tickets to that at the best prices, flash deals at the end, right before the event happens. You sometimes get the best prices with Gametime. And you get pictures of the seats before you sit down. Gametime is an incredible platform for finding all your tickets. Right now, download the app. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. You can create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get Coach back in here. Coach, let's go to the defensive side. I'll start on this one, I guess. Well, I'm going to start with the good, right? We're going to start with the good. I think when he's locked in, there's some really nice clips of him. Austin P was one where when he's locked into a guy, he has the ability to mirror dribbles, especially against more, bigger, more physical guards. He can really take contact. He holds his ground. He's a guy that you look back at some of the people that gave us troubles last year. I think on the perimeter, he could stay with the Damask and give him some trouble with his physicality. So I like the physicality that he brings on the perimeter.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point on Damask. I mean, we unfortunately we saw that show one too often at the end of the year with Damask just basically doing whatever he wanted to the Badgers at any spot on the floor. I do agree with you with his body and his physicality. When he's locked in, he wants to guard. I think he does really, like you said, a good job keeping a guy in front, containing the basketball, mirroring the ball. And I also agree with you, like you said, is I think he's going to be more physical, because, Chucky did a lot of times would get posted quite a bit or give up deep penetration where guys could just elevate and finish over him. And so I do think Camren has, more physicality to his game defensively where, it's going to be harder for guards to just kind of back him down and get into the paint and get whatever shot they want to do.
What do you think about, and I know at times Gard is, I don't want to say inflexible because he's not inflexible, but I do think with the three guys coming in, this lineup becomes more switchable if at times you wanted to. Like I think Camren Hunter can guard ones and twos a little easier than Chucky potentially could. I think Amos has more switchability. I think Tanjay has some switchability. Do you think this lineup gets maybe a little more defensively versatile with these guys?
Yeah, I know we'll get into some other things about the defense, but I do agree with you on the versatility. And I think a lot of that just has to do, it has to do with the size of these three guys that they're bringing in. I mean, like you said, Cameron's bigger, more physical, has more beef to him than Chucky. So that's an element. I definitely think Tanjay, we'll get to him on a later show, but he definitely brings a bigger, more physical body to him. And then, like you said, Amos, not necessarily the physicality that Tyler Wall has, but I think the versatility and the length, and especially his ability to time shots up, especially from the weak side, blocking shots or whatever, I think will bring another versatility dimension to Gard and his staff where they can be, more functional in terms of switching, 1 through 4 than they've had, this past season and years prior to that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you think some of the guards that have given Chucky trouble, Cam may be better suited to guard those guys. Now, the flip side of that is let's talk about some things that potentially worry you defensively with Cam Hunter after watching the film. I'll let you start on this one. What did you see that kind of raised the eyebrows a little bit?
Yeah, two things that really make me nervous from him on a defensive standpoint is his closeouts are really poor. That's one thing is, from just watching Synergy and watching his clips, I mean, he kind of did the trifecta on bad closeouts. You would have where he just run at a guy, not chop his feet, and the guy, would just take it right off the bounce and blow right by him. You had the other scenario where you do a short closeout or whatever, but he wouldn't bring his hands with him or shoot his hands. And so then he would just give up uncontested shots. And then the third weakness in terms of his closeouts that I saw quite a bit on film is, he would kind of long stride it and kind of get caught between, not knowing whether he's closing out to a shooter or a driver, and just kind of would lay them. And they'd just go around and either create a shot for somebody or finish it at the rim. So I think, that's a big concern, is his closeouts. The good news about that for Badger fans and the staff, I think that's all correctable and coachable. And then the other thing that makes me a little concerned, especially on the defense end, you and I have talked about Chucky. Chucky got a lot of credit for his defense, and I think because Chucky had really good hands and could steal it, but especially his pick and roll defense with Chucky at times. I know you and I've kind of taken issue with that. I think Cam's pick and roll defense might be a step below what Chucky had, because there's a lot of film on there where once he hits a screen, I kind of call it a stick and hold, where a guy comes and sets a ball screen on him and he'll literally just run into the guy and kind of stick on him. So he just quits guarding his guy, and it leads to a lot of baskets on the other end for the opponent.
Yeah, I saw that too. Sometimes it just felt, and listen, we're not here to say somebody's not trying at all. Yep. It felt like a lack of effort at times, though. And there is an element, and we've talked about this, that defense as a whole was pretty bad. And it's hard sometimes if you're the point guard. Like, I feel like that system wasn't fully cohesive, and because of that, it kind of brings everybody down to that level. I think we saw it last year with the Badgers. I feel like the system wasn't cohesive, and everybody kind of played down to a level. So I think there's an element of that when you watch the Central Arkansas film.
I agree completely on that. Not knowing Central Arkansas staff and stuff to say what they emphasize one way or another, but to your point, they were just statistically, they were a poor defense, and you could tell they kind of played a mixture of not aggressive 2-3 zone and a mixture of switching man, and it just seemed to see that there was a lack of importance of structure, intensity, or just belief in their defensive scheme. And so when you play a passive 2-3 zone, or you switch everything, which what it appeared Central Arkansas did quite a bit, it takes away that accountability factor on the defense end by guys, because they'll just act like they get screened and then it's somebody else's problem or somebody else's assignment. So I think that hopefully that has a lot to do with it. To your point, and you're right in saying, don't want to question the lack of effort by Cam defensively, but I do. You can question how important the defensive end is to him. Now, hopefully, maybe that's a system-driven thing, that Central Arkansas was more concerned offensively than defensively, but it's definitely a concern.
Let me give you another one, too, when I was just watching the film, that at times I felt like the off-ball awareness, and again, I think this all ties into that defense just wasn't very good at times, but some of the off-ball stuff where they skip a pass, it feels like the feet are kind of just stuck. Then it takes an extra step to get there, and then that partially leads to that bad closeout. It feels like there's some potential off-ball stuff where, listen, Greg Gard's going to emphasize, this staff is going to emphasize that stuff more than, not just Central Arkansas, more than just about any program, because that's what Greg Gard does. But it felt like just defensively, there was sometimes not always the off-ball awareness there either.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's one of the things that stood out off the ball. To your point, looked like he had heavy feet, really flat-footed, and I think a lot of that is, he kind of just got caught ball watching or just watching the ball. So, it took him out of, you pointed out a couple times on a couple of clips where he was turned the wrong way when the ball went in the post and he was away from the bar. So just a general lack of awareness off ball. I mean, we talked about on ball, that I think when he decides he wants to do it, he can be a pretty good on ball defender, but there is a lot of improvement for him away from the ball.
Yeah, I agree with that part you put in there, though. the clips you watch where he was really engaged on somebody. And by the way, it's hard if you have to be the offensive engine of your team, a team that's not very good, and then also you don't see NBA players lock in on both ends when they're the offensive engine. So it's a lot to have somebody to do that on both sides. Going to Wisconsin, to your point, he's not going to be the offensive engine required to do everything. And I think you're going to see a more attuned defensive version of him. At least that would be the hope.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point you made there, in the sense that, coaches or whoever, whether you like it or not, players are going to rest at some point when on the floor. So they either choose to rest offensively or defensively. So, and it's all in their mindset and what their game is. So obviously, to your point, Cam's going to be out there. I mean, he averaged high 30s minutes per game. So if he's going to catch his breath at Central Arkansas, it was going to be on the defense end and not on the offense end. So, that's a great point made on your part, is, I think that has a lot to do with it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, talk a little bit about Chucky Hepburn. And basically that's what Camren Hunter is here to do. He's here to more or less fill those shoes. We're going to talk about how he may be able to do that. And are we maybe overestimating the loss of Chucky Hepburn a little bit? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers with Coach. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is the number one place if you want to go just play a little bit of that classic Monopoly, but move it into the modern century. Listen, we're not playing with oil lanterns anymore and navigating on the high seas with wind at our backs. We have engines, we have electricity, we have modernity. Now we have modern Monopoly. That's what Monopoly Go is there for. Over 150 million downloads on the App Store and Google Play for a reason. Play with your friends, against your friends, climb up the leaderboards, play across a dynamic number of boards at the same time, so you're never going to be bored. Monopoly Go is the best place to play the classic and beloved American board game. Right now, there's always something fun to do over at Monopoly Go. Download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. All right, let's get Coach back on and talk about something that I'm really interested to get your take on. And we've talked about it a couple times, Coach. I just want to start, before we talk about Hunter necessarily replacing Hepburn and how we feel about that in totality now that we've kind of gone through the game. I feel like Badger fans have overestimated the on-court impact of Chucky Hepburn. And I say that with all due respect. Like, I would rather Chucky Hepburn still be here. But you're not replacing an all-conference guard.
You and I are on the same page on this point, and I listen to you every day, and I thought you made some really great points. I think people, what you really pointed out is, I think people have overblown the impact of Chucky, because he's hit big shots for the Badgers in his career, and I think that's kind of that's the more forefront in people's minds, that he hit those big shots. And it kind of blows his game, because to your point, last year he only averaged 9 points a game, and his career at Wisconsin, his career average, he averaged 9.8. So, and he shot 32% from three this year. He shot it really well, his sophomore year, not so well this past year. So to your point is, I think the impact from an offensive standpoint with Chucky, I don't think is nearly as big, because, he only averaged 9.8 points a game, but he took a lot of shots in their offense. And, especially at the end of shot clocks, the end of games, I mean, he did a really good job in his Wisconsin career hitting big shots, but, he missed a lot of big shots, especially the last couple of years down the stretch. So, I think people tend to remember the good times more than the bad times. And, I definitely think from an offensive production standpoint, there's a lot of room for improvement, whether it's Cam or somebody else, that Chucky necessarily didn't provide. In my opinion, the big thing that they're going to miss Chucky more than anything, though, is he was a pure point guard in terms of his assists. I mean, he had 313 assists, so his assist to turnover ratio was almost 2.5 to 1, which is really good for a point guard, which is what you want in a point guard. And even last year he was in 130s with assists, and Cam's in his 2 seasons he's played so far, the most assists he's had in the season's 107, and he has basically a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So that's where I say he's not going to, that's where the Badgers and the Badgers fans are really going to miss is that assist factor, the passing factor that Chucky had, because I don't think that's a strength of Camren's game.
Yeah, I'd agree. And you think back, by the way, to make this even more worrisome, and I just started this segment off with, don't worry, Badger fans are fine. But you think about the type of team that has given Wisconsin trouble the last couple of years. It's the team that gets underneath our guards, gets really physical, ball pressure. And now you're losing a guy like Chucky that was probably one of your best equipped guys to deal with that, and replacing him with Camren Hunter, who is, for some of the strengths we talked about, probably not the guy best equipped to deal with a high pressure defense in his face.
Absolutely. And I think something that hasn't been talked about enough either is, even this past season, I don't think the ball's moved well enough in the Badgers system than what you've seen in years past. And I think that's led to some of the offensive struggles, and then especially this last year, Chucky his assist to turnover ratio was good, but, he had the ball in his hands a lot. And like Max is more of a combo guard and Cam's more of a combo guard. So that's one of my concerns is I think in general, offensively, the Badgers need more player and ball movement. And, if you look at the roster last year and this year with Camren coming in as opposed to Chucky and stuff, I don't really see a difference in the style of player. Their guards tend to be more ball dominant than movement dominant. So that is one of my concerns offensively is, are they going to get that ball movement? Because they have more scoring mentality guards and they don't have that distributor per se.
Well, let me ask you the penultimate question then. Did Greg Gard and the Badgers adequately replace Chucky Hepburn? Is Camren, although a different player, is he an adequate replacement in your opinion?
That's I'm going to hedge a little bit. That's a really tough question because two things on that. Like we just said, Chucky's offensive presence and production has been overblown in his career, but you're also talking about replacing a starter in a Big Ten program that Chucky started from day one. And, he was going to be a year older. It's his team. It's his program. That's hard to replace. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you bring in, but it's really hard to replace when you're bringing in a player that played at a low major and not a successful low major in Central Arkansas, on top of the fact that he sat out last year due to injury. Because there's going to be an adjustment factor for Camren regardless, new school, new city. Now you're talking about he's going up 2 levels, if not more, to the Big Ten, and you're trying to replace, a 3-time starter in a big time program. That's big shoes. That's a lot to ask somebody, and there's going to be an adjustment factor with Cam just because of all the change in general and not playing last year and playing at the level he's going to be thrown in to play at and fill the shoes he's expected to fill. That's a lot. That's a lot to put on somebody like, not just Cam, but anybody. And it's going to be hard shoes to fill, but I don't know, to be fair, who was out there that the Badgers could go get that could fill somebody's shoes like Chucky with the experience and the minutes that he's played.
Yeah, that is really well said. You think about the games and environments he's been in, right? Even on the losses, you go on the road and to Illinois and you play future NBA guys. Like Cam has not been in those environments. He's not been in West Lafayette playing against that crowd or in, so that is a great point, man. Like and it could go one of a couple ways. Like people are wired a certain way, right? And he could step up to that moment, but you could also see there's a scenario here where this is not close to what we needed, and it kind of falls on its face. And internally, I don't know what the backup option is unless you think Daniel Freitag is ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They're taking a big risk in a sense because I agree with you is, I like Kamari, but Kamari, me personally, in my opinion, he's a 10 to 15 minute guy and probably a good, backup to backup point guard. Just because of the size limitations really hurt him, especially in the Big Ten. And, you're asking Cam to step up, and then that's a lot to put on Freitag. Now, I've talked about Freitag, and I'm super excited for him. I think he's going to be really good. But again, it's a high school guy going into the Big Ten, and with the portal and the way things are now, everybody's older and more experienced. You're putting a lot on a young guy's shoulders. So, do I believe in him? Absolutely. But it might take a little bit for Free Tag to get to where Badger fans want or hope him to be. So they're putting a lot of eggs in the basket that, they need a lot of things to go right to adequately replace somebody like Chucky.
And really, I think I should have framed the question differently when I asked you, because it's really not just Camren replacing Chucky. It's Camren plus what you think Daniel Freitag is going to be, plus another year of growth from Kamari McGee to replace Chucky Hepburn.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think what I really, what I liked what you said in listening the last couple of weeks is, the one thing I can buy into this individually, it's going to be hard to say these three guys that they've brought in to, replace what they lost is going to be hard to do that. But I do, to your point you've made in the past, is talking about it might be the sums of the pieces that they put together might fit overall better for the Badgers and their team and their offense, where the sum of the parts could be better than the individuals that they're replacing, which in turn could work better for the Badgers than it did this past year. I think it's something you've mentioned in the past that, I think to hold out hope, I think it's a really good perspective to have.
This has been awesome, man. He is Coach Gauthier, breaking down Camren Hunter's film. We're going to be back. We're going to talk Xavier Amos. We're going to talk John Tonje. And I think we're also going to do a show, Coach, if I can continue stealing your time, on Freitag and Robeson and break down the freshman film coming in as well. I appreciate it as always, man. It's awesome insight having you on, and people are smarter because of it.
I appreciate you having me, Ryan. And like I said, what you do every day for Badger fans, I can't thank you enough. And you know me, I'm always ready to talk ball with you.
Let's go. For everyone else tuning in, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we will be back tomorrow.